I wish to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people as traditional custodians of the land we're meeting on and recognise any other people or families with connection to the lands of the ACT and region. I wish to acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the life of this city and this region. I'd also like to acknowledge and welcome other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are listening today. Welcome to Safety Spotlight, a podcast from WorkSafe ACT. My name's Lish Fejer, and in each episode we're going to focus on a particular area of workplace health and safety. In this episode, we're focusing on CALD employees in the workplace, culturally and linguistically diverse employees. What are the common challenges employees from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds face in the workplace, the effects that has on safety and their health, and what PCBUs and employers can do to support and build a really strong and safe and diverse workforce. As always, we've gathered before the microphones. Jacqueline Agius, Work Health and Safety Commissioner here of WorkSafe ACT. Hello, Jacqui.
Kif Lish, Siti, antivirus. Allora, grazie ħafna tali ġejtilhom. Oh, sorry, did I confuse you? Hard, right? When someone speaks to you in a language that you don't understand. Just imagine how difficult it is for people on work sites who are trying to get across understanding technical safety advice. Just for those who are listening, what I said was, how are you, Lish and Siti? I have a virus. What can you do? Thank you very much for coming here today.
I'm really glad you introduced it like that, Jacqui, because this is such a challenging topic and we have such a diverse, fabulous workforce, and making sure that they are all supported and safe, absolutely essential. Joining us also in front of the microphones is Siti Mustaffa, who brings everything to the table today. She's a services engineer with construction control, but a qualified mechanical engineer with years of experience in the design and construction industry. She's also currently the co-president of the ACT chapter of the National Association of Women in Construction. Siti, hello.
Terima kasih. Selamat pagi. Nama saya Siti Mustaffa. So that is in my native language, which is Malay, Bahasa, as you might know it. And I just said, good morning. My name is Siti Mustaffa.
Already in this podcast, culturally diverse. When we're talking about CALD workers, why is it important to recognise CALD?
Well, when it comes to work health and safety, of course, the important thing is that the Work Health and Safety Act provides that people must be provided safety information in a way that they can understand it. So when we're talking about culturally and linguistically diverse workers, we understand that they are at a higher safety risk because of the fact that they're culturally and linguistically diverse.
What are those safety risks? What are some of the key challenges?
Certainly language barriers is the first thing that we see. Coming from diverse backgrounds, and we're talking about coming from all parts of the world really, where differences in culture is observed, being new to the country, not knowing cultural practices of, the new place that they're calling home.
And cultural differences, right, Siti?
Exactly.
So that when people move from other countries to Australia, the safety climate in their country may be different. Some of the terminology may be different. So it's really important that communication is presented to them in the way that they understand. How about lack of training? Because you've had lived experiences, Siti, as an engineer, which is incredible. So you've, as a woman who is an engineer, I guess there is a double whammy, so to speak, for you.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, you're right, Jacqui. And as far as vulnerable workers go, you're right, double whammy. CALD, obviously CALD, person, an immigrant, and a woman. Yes, and a very outspoken one at that. So I've had to. I would consider myself to be really fortunate that I am able to surround myself with kindred and like-minded individuals who are working towards same goal. And I'll talk more about that shortly. But it takes what you see today is a product of years of having to advocate for myself, having to advocate for those around me who don't have a strong voice, and being from a different culture where speaking up is also not part of your culture will also play a part in the vulnerability of CALD workers in Australia.
How have you advocated for that, Siti? Because you said you're outspoken, you're happy to speak up about things, but what had to change in you to do that?
So justice is one thing, but also realizing that as a woman wanting to be taken seriously in the workplace, and a coloured woman at that too. So, all the usuals of getting talked down to, seen past because of the colour of my skin and my gender. These are the things that get to you, keep you up at night thinking what can I do to get taken more seriously or be heard at work? And I realized that, so I'm really fortunate that in Singapore, English is taught in our curriculum. I actually also learned English from reading Archie comics. So coming to Australia to do my university studies was not that huge a shift relatively to some folks who are not as proficient in English. And I knew it was, I had a responsibility to use my voice to advocate for the voiceless or those who are not as loud or who can be as loud. I'm really fortunate I have the platform that I do as well to do that.
Do you think a lot of places have someone who is able to advocate for their workforce or their colleagues, Jacqui? Because not just the diversity of language groups within our workforce, but all those expectations.
Well, when it comes to safety, of course, the best advocate in a workplace is the HSR. And, we would hope that all workers can go to a HSR, but particularly workers where their main language is other than English. HSR is a health and safety representative on sites who advocate and represent workers who are having difficulties with safety issues.
And every organisation has to have HSR or a health and safety representative?
There is not a requirement for every organisation to have one, but at WorkSafe ACT, we say it's best practice. HSR can be your absolute best friend in a workplace. Some of the other risks that present for culturally and linguistically diverse workers are things like they are overrepresented in those higher risk jobs and risk industries such as construction, agriculture and manufacturing, and in a lot of instances cleaning, where they're dealing with at times some difficult equipment, but also chemicals that they need to ensure are handled safely. And if the information isn't presented to them in a way that they can understand, that can result in some really serious injuries. But we also deal with the isolation of workers and also discrimination, which for culturally and linguistically diverse workers is significant in our country. And just on discrimination, and it used to be a really common question to me as I was growing up, what culture are you from, or what country are you from, or, where do you come from? Less so now, as, coming from Malta, that is more European. European cultures are much more accepted in Australia now. But when I was young, I had a fifth grade teacher who would tell the other children that they should be careful about coming into contact with me because they may get wog germs. And so that sort of common discussion and discrimination in Australia, and it's not that long ago that was occurring to me, and Siti may have an example of what's occurred to her as a culturally and linguistically diverse worker.
And what you see in the construction industry, Siti?
Yeah, Jacqui, I just wanted to echo that stereotypes rampant, especially in construction industry as well. So, we're not hiding that fact. We just simply need the workforce. And in this present day and age, that workforce, construction, is made up of a lot of skilled workers. So, for example, in town here in Canberra, we've got steel fixers who come from, Mongolia. We've got plasterers that come from China, and Korea, and the Philippines.
Have they been trained in country, in, say,
Okay.
Philippines, or are they trained to
get
workplace
this.
safety here?
So I have heard of stories where somebody may be a professional back home, so they may be a doctor, a physician, or a lawyer, lecturer back home, and when they come to Australia, their qualifications are not recognised. So I don't want to say the word relegated, but they have to take on.
Some of those more higher risk jobs.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah, the higher risk jobs. So an example is a couple who back home in Mongolia were a doctor and a lawyer couple. They came out to Australia, and now they work together for a steel fixing business. So what they work as in Australia today is not something that they would have done back home. So it'll be a new skill set altogether for them to adopt, get used to, on top of the language, the additional new language to converse in on a daily basis. Yeah.
It's fascinating, Lish, that you ask about training, because even if somebody is trained in their first country, there are obligations on their PCBU to train them here on the safety requirements, standards and law in Australia. And sometimes there are differences between what those safety obligations and duties are in their first country to what they are here in Australia.
And getting across that language barrier, some of those training packages presented in language, are there ways of being able to?
One of the things that I have seen on sites is that where there are groups of culturally and linguistically diverse workers, one of them may be English speaking, and so the PCBU will often use that person to translate the information to the rest of the group. That can work, but of course it depends on the proficiency of the person who is doing the translation. And when I'm speaking proficiency, I'm speaking about the proficiency in English. And so there is as I mentioned earlier, that requirement for communication to be presented in a way that the person understands. So there's some really good resources around, and certainly at WorkSafe ACT, we've been translating safety information into other languages, and that's available on our website. But we also have Safe Work Australia, who has numerous documents that are translated that employers can use. Of course, Safe Work Australia has a guide for communicating with migrant and multicultural workers about work health and safety, and has a range of material translated into languages other than English, which can be used by workers in the ACT. Of course, the important thing is that when we're talking about safety and consultation, we're talking about those individual sites. So where that general safety information is important and helps, it's when you get down to the particular place of employment where the duties are to consult with the workers about safety, to give them training to ensure that they have information in a way that they can understand, that the PCBU fulfills those obligations.
We know their obligations, but for the employees that arrive on site and in these industries, are they aware of all these regulations, the employer's obligations, what's available if they don't adhere to them?
Good question, very loaded too. And I will preface by saying I can't speak for other PCBUs, but for in my current employer, we require all workers that come to site, and in fact also workers that are off site that may be doing our design for us, because they may come from other regions as well, to do induction training on. So we have a document management platform, and I have actually personally come across examples where, in person someone might arrive on site and they only would speak 2 words of English, and that would be good morning. But then they are required to be documented on our induction records. So I have asked, our guys as well, how do we go about that? And as Jackie mentioned, which is also a requirement, that a translator for that particular group who speaks that same language to be present to translate any comms that needs to occur. We do that. We do see that, and our site managers ensure that this translator is also always there, and they talk through them to get messages across to the workers. And proficiency is one thing. Another factor is also interpersonal relationships. That's actually a factor that I think gets overlooked. And so if you have 2 workers who, in a group of 5, say, who don't get along, and one of these workers is the only translator on site, unfortunately, I just think you will get some mistranslations or some information that does not get relayed through. Yeah, and so we will miss anything that the affected worker would like to raise. And so another thing also with the interpersonal relationship is the reluctance to communicate one's concerns if it has to go through, their aggressor or something,
or the risk of losing one's job, or there's all the visa requirements and that hinging on employment and bringing home a wage. There's an extra layer of complexity into workplace health and safety. So we've looked at some of the challenges. How does that play out in the workplace in terms of health and safety what do you see from a commissioner's point of view here in the ACT but across Australia, Jackie?
I remember visiting a workplace in 2023 where there were a group of non-English speaking workers, and I was with a couple of our inspectors. And there were some really serious risks on that site. It was a residential construction site, and there was a very serious internal fall from height risk. And when our inspectors tried to communicate with the workers, of course they couldn't communicate with us. One of our inspectors was in a phone call with their manager, who was not on site with them, taking care of their safety. And that person then translated what we were saying to them, and we ended up in a situation where we needed to prohibit the work on the site because it was so dangerous. But what that resulted in, and this is where culturally and linguistically diverse workers can be so vulnerable, was that they didn't work for the rest of the day and they didn't get paid for the rest of the day. So there are many complex situations. Recently, one of our enabling services staff members attended an inspection with some inspectors, and we have a program in our organisation where we encourage our workers to go out and see what the rest of the workforce are doing. And her main language is Mandarin, and thankfully she was actually able to translate for these workers who were on a site and provide them with some information about safety, and that worked well. So as the regulator, there are also challenges and difficulties for us, because we don't ever want to put workers in a position where they're not earning money. But if it comes to being paid for the afternoon or dying, I know which one I would choose, and they're the difficult decisions that our inspectors are confronted with.
And that requires the inspectors to go out and see it. Do you think there's a under-reporting of safety issues?
We know that in relation to safety generally, that people are less likely to come forward if a job is insecure, for instance, but particularly with people who are culturally and linguistically diverse, who have a different view of authority, they are less reluctant to come forward and report a safety breach.
Absolutely, that culture of remaining silent and just...
They are more reluctant to come forward and report a safety breach.
Yeah, and Jacqui, on another demographic that we see that happening in is also women or gender diverse people on site as well, who are very reluctant to come forward for fear of backlash. And worst case, losing their job and then not being able to secure future jobs because it's a small town.
Yeah. And bullying and harassment as well. We've talked of physical safety, but bullying and harassment also, and the psychological harm that can cause your workforce.
Absolutely, and that comes down to things like being isolated or discriminated against, which I've already referred to. And there is an obligation, and we've spoken lots about that in podcasts around psychosocial hazards in the workplace. And certainly the risk of a psychosocial hazard is heightened for someone who is culturally and linguistically diverse. I just want to go back to Siti's comments around us being a small town, and that's interesting from the perspective of our diverse community in the ACT, because according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics census data from 2021, approximately 30% of employed persons in the ACT were either born overseas or from a family whose main language is something other than English, and 30% is a significant number.
Yeah, in that vein, Jacqui, I am a first-generation immigrant, and so I fall in that statistic.
And you're in a professional field, because we've looked at people working in the construction industry, cleaning industry, all of those roles, but then also in the professional services. And while the challenges are different, they're still there for culturally and linguistically diverse people. As you said, you're overlooked for jobs. They see the colour of your skin before the qualities that you bring to that role. How do you overcome that then from a workplace safety and psychological risk safety?
Yeah. Can I actually start by saying mental health awareness and talking about mental illness in general is heavily stigmatized in Asian countries. So specifically, I'm referring to Southeast Asia and also some subcontinent Asia as well. So I'm really fortunate again, just with my interests in feminism, has exposed me to looking at reading up about mental health issues and neurodiversity. So I don't want to say I'm well versed, but I'm certainly interested and do some reading on it. But I will say that because mental health and mental illness is not really talked about in Asian homes. Sorry to give a very specific example. The people that come out to Australia, firstly, I want to say, coming to a new country, you'd have to have mental strength to make that move first and foremost, and then to encounter new cultures, meeting different types of people. That in itself is, whilst exciting, it's also quite a bit to take in. And then when you Australian culture is so interesting, and I've been here 15 years, and I feel like I can assimilate into it. I have adopted some of the lingo, but
Like double whammy.
Yes, is that? There you go. Maybe I might have seen that in an Archie comic. Something. Yeah, I don't know. CALD workers, they may not be aware of the psychosocial hazards that are more prevalent in Western countries, and I say this, Australia is seen as a Western country to child workers, and so therefore they may not be equipped with the knowledge or tools to really address or assess these hazards that they may be exposed to. Yeah, and this will could be detrimental, and you'll see the flow-on effects of being on the receiving end of psychosocial hazard on the workplace.
Because they're not aware that is
Yeah.
a work health and safety risk.
Yeah. And also it comes back to also the cultural differences. Yeah, what's the norm there? What's the norm here? Decorum differences in decorum and the like.
Expectations, and it comes down to communication, conversation.
Yeah. It's just like how their building code is also written in their language and ours is written in our language. The Australian building code is written in English only, as far as I'm aware. Yeah.
Lots to discuss, and I know we've just touched the surface. Jackie, have you got any case studies you can share with us to illustrate what we've talked about?
We did have a significant prosecution in December 2024 in relation to a called worker who was not properly trained, and it resulted in an injury to that called worker. And the matter was JB Slab Pty Ltd, who pleaded guilty to charges stemming from an incident on the 24th of May 2022 where a worker was trapped after a ready wall structure which had not been properly constructed or braced had collapsed onto the worker. It was the worker's first day on the site. The worker had only been in the country for a very short amount of time and had not received any training or an induction to be on that particular site. And the company was fined $225,000 for that breach of the Work Health and Safety Act, with a starting fine of $300,000, which would have been imposed had the company not pleaded guilty to that charge. So there are significant fines and regulatory action that we can take as a regulator when we see breaches around training and not providing information in a way that the person can understand.
And this is the challenge for WorkSafe, is to be proactive and get the information out there, so you're not having to respond with a stick approach. And the fine, does the fine work? Does that work then across the board at changing behaviour in an industry such as the construction industry, every industry looking for employees, for a workforce? Just looking out the window here at WorkSafe ACT, I can see construction all around us. It's not like ants all over the construction site. I think some of them probably could do with more workers always.
Absolutely, Lish. And we do really see challenges, particularly in the residential construction industry, around culturally and linguistically diverse workers not receiving proper safety entitlements. And that is why we have such an extensive proactive campaign in the residential construction industry. It is a high-risk industry for us. It has a lot of injuries and work health and safety breaches.
Hospitality as well. There's so many industries, aged care, health.
All of them. So last year we did quite a big campaign in the aged care industry. We've just completed a proactive campaign in the retail industry, and hospitality is one of our highlighted industries. We are seeing more and more culturally and linguistically diverse workers in both retail and hospitality, particularly those casual workers who are coming into our country and taking up that casual work. So Safe Work Australia also ran the Deliver Yourself Home Safely campaign from May to September 2023. It targeted food delivery workers and provided practical information and key contact details to help influence positive WHS attitudes and behaviours. And the campaign was communicated in 7 languages: Mandarin, Punjabi, Nepali, Vietnamese, Hindu and Urdu, as well as English. Information was provided on key topics, including insurance, worker WHS rights and duties, managing WHS risks and workers' compensation. The Translating and Interpret Services, TIS National, is a free translating and interpreting service available for employers and people whose main language is other than English.
That's great, Jackie, because the workplace has changed. It's not just people going into an employer and taking home a pay packet each week. It's the gig economy, it's Uber drivers, it's people making a living in so many different ways. And so how policy has been able to keep up with that, as well as those people keeping themselves safe.
And the gig economy, Lish, is absolutely a vulnerable workplace for culturally and linguistically diverse workers. So it's really important that we ensure that those workers are protected from a work health and safety perspective.
I did want to share that in 2024, NAWIC conducted research, have published a report called the Not So Little Things Survey. So the objectives of this research were to gain deeper insights into microaggressions affecting women within the current state of the construction industry, as well as to explore how organizations can do better to address and prevent microaggressions. And what I want to share is the key findings of that report, in which 88% of respondents reported experiencing microaggressions. And within that, 100% of people with a disability selected yes to experiencing microaggressions, followed by 91% of LGBTQIA+, and a person of colour, 86%, and then migrant, 85%. So those are really high numbers, and I will not be surprised to see results that are not too dissimilar in hospitality industry.
What do you do with that? Because clearly there's an issue.
So from NAWIC point of view, we are ramping up the advocacy around that. While I can't answer to the great things that the national team are running here on the ground in Canberra, we are as volunteers. Ideally, we would like to prepare a toolkit that we can share with PCBUs. So just fact sheets as to how to make your site or your workplace a safer place of employment, safer construction site. A checklist, if you like, as well. Have you got amenities for female workers? Have you got ablution facilities? Any breakout spaces in which a worker could go into if they needed to decompress. And also on top of that, accessibility requirements. So our committee also, make ourselves available to talk to anyone. And it doesn't matter if you're a woman or not. Is anyone who requires a listening ear. Yeah.
So NAWIC, what does it stand for?
So NAWIC stands for the National Association of Women in Construction. And I believe we are celebrating our 30th year this year. Mm-hmm. So there's also NAWIC in the US, which they refer to as NAWIC. Again, linguistically, Travis. But here you can call it NAWIC. We've got a national team, which comprises the now CEO, some operations manager, membership and events coordinator roles. But really the heart of NAWIC are our volunteers. So I am a volunteer at NAWIC and have been since 2020. So we don't get paid to do this. So all this advocacy, all the events that you see run by us, they're largely volunteer driven and organized.
Have you seen a change over those 30 years for
Oh.
women in construction?
Yeah, so we've started seeing facilities or toilets for women on site. So there was a big push from now we can like-minded organizations. Something that we were also working on was getting menstruation products being made available to workers in industry. And when I say workers in industry, it also extends to office workers, because we get draftspeople and engineers who are not necessarily on site.
Are there a lot of called women in construction, or are you an anomaly?
There are not that many.
Why do you think that is?
Culturally, it's confronting. What I do is considered non-traditional for a woman from my background and ethnicity. Yeah.
Are there similar organisations for the type of work that women would be doing in Australia as migrant workers or culturally and linguistically diverse workers, such as, I imagine, hospitality, I imagine cleaning?
Cleaning is a big one. I would say actually healthcare. So we have a lot of nurses as well who come from overseas.
Are there support and advocacy organisations like NAWIC?
I actually do not know, but there's a Women in Firefighting Australasia. They exist. However, I don't know whether they've got a what representation of CALD workers they've got, but yeah, that would be really interesting to find out.
Let's go on to strategies, so how we can improve the workplace for called workers. What are some of those? Give us your list, Jackie. What would you like to see as the Commissioner?
Yeah, so communicating WHS information in an easily accessible format is absolutely key to preventing and reducing workplace breaches. So in the ACT, we know that called workers reported 15% higher rate of workplace injuries than other workers. But what we want to see is a combination approach. We know that combination approaches work best, and that would be face-to-face communication, because that's a good way to check the understanding, that the person understands what they're meant to do, and to use language that is common and clear and to the point. And so don't speak louder. Be careful using jargon, like double whammy or fair go, because even though we love it, those sort of things are it's more likely that workers who are called will not understand those Australian slangs that we're used to. Practical demonstrations also are really good, so that people are seeing how to carry out the work. That is a very good way of demonstrating how to carry out a task safely, but also visual aids. Visual aids work really, really well.
If we incorporated technology into all of this, I just think of the boost that AI and technology is bringing. Is that helped in any way, getting the WH message?
It should. We should actually really leverage what how AI has progressed. And what I'm thinking is, more infographics, posters on site in the various languages of the workers that you have on site. So we've got Mongolians and Chinese and Korean workers and Fijian and Polynesian workers who, their proficiency in English is better than the earlier group I mentioned. But definitely we should be leveraging AI today. Other strategies that could be added to the list is things that we can do on the ground first. So toolbox talks that are more inclusive.
How would you, when you say more inclusive, what needs to be done?
So instead of just making it for the one translator to represent the group, invite the group to attend as well, even if it's lesser frequency, but just to show putting names to faces. Yeah, and it goes in and is, bi-directional. It's for the CALD workers to see, who the PCBU representatives are, and vice versa. What we do on site here is we have barbecues. And those are, everyone on site is invited. If you're not scheduled to be on site that day, we will tell you, okay, we're going to have a barbecue on X date. Come and join us if you would like to. And I would like to add, with the barbecue and social activities like that, just cultural awareness as well, in terms of we've got vegetarians, we've got non-pork consuming members, and of course no alcohol on site.
I'm glad you were really clear about
you.
that one, because there's no alcohol on site
No,
at all.
yeah.
But all those other
Yeah.
risks too, I'm thinking of during Ramadan. When Ramadan
absolutely.
falls, it
Yeah.
must have a huge impact on sites and how you manage that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that comes down to being a flexible workplace and ensuring that you're an inclusive workplace.
Yeah, that's right. And one more thing that I wanted to talk about was also better focus on, as the PCBU, getting stakeholder engagement. And when I say stakeholders, this includes the employees that are on your payroll, getting them on board with the policies you have, such as anti-bullying and harassment policy. I've printed out some here. So, for my current workplace, we have to sign this when we join the company, but we also are required to attend mandatory training. A few months ago, I attended an inclusivity and anti-bullying workshop at work, and that was extremely useful. Having said that, that was in English. That was conducted
I was
in
going to say,
English.
is that just for managers or for across the workforce?
Good question. Yeah, very good question. It was across the office dwelling, or the site engineers and cadets. So and the construction workers too. But then that's where the line stops. Our subcontractors, we don't get to say, you as our subcontractor, you are. This is mandatory training for you to undergo.
Although that's a really interesting one, subcontractors, because of course there is a joint duty there when it comes to subcontractors. The person conducting the business or undertaking is required to ensure that they have oversight of the safety for those subcontractors on the site.
Yeah, and this should extend more than just the swims that we're seeing. Yeah.
Siti, you've mentioned some leadership approaches, to engage stakeholders through a barbecue. I like what you did there. But policy changes as well that support cold workers. Have there been big changes over the years?
I can't speak for changes because, my experience is only through the places I've worked at. But with my current work, they've got the following policies that I feel are directly related to CALD demographic. So, family and domestic violence support policy, anti-discrimination and harassment policy, gender equality policy, Indigenous participation policy, and also, very importantly, the vulnerable worker policy. These policies do get updated over time. And in my example, I can see the different revisions, and they're all on our server. It's all transparent, and the changes to policies are made known. So the differences between the revisions. I do strongly believe that the directors do stand by the policies that they're making their employees sign to. I personally do. They align with my values and morals and ethics. So I'd like to think that other people are also in the same on the same boat.
And being able to understand them. So 70% of called workers report difficulties in understanding safety instructions and procedures at work. 70%. So those 70% who are reporting that are at risk because they don't understand the safety requirement in their particular workplace.
Yeah, so back to what you said earlier, Jackie, regarding subcontractors and the PCBU, that it is a shared responsibility. I wholeheartedly agree. So the policies that I have with me are, of course, with my employer. In my role as an engineer, I have not questioned our subcontractors as to, have you got a similar policy? But seeing as we are the PCBU, I don't see any issues to share resources like if you need counselling in the different languages that are spoken on site, So
I'm an absolute
and
fan of
anonymity,
not reinventing the wheel, Siti. I think that the more we share the best practice, the better it will be for everyone in workplaces.
Yeah. I was just going to say, with anonymity, how important is that for the culturally and linguistically diverse workforce, so that doesn't have the knock-on effect further down the line for their career or their.
I think anonymity will play a big factor as well, because you'll find that in where you'll find pockets of cultures, X knows why.
Small town effect.
It is a small town effect, and if you're dealing with something that is you think is really personal and you don't want your neighbors or your peers from the same cultural group to know, I think anonymity in this instance is paramount. Yeah.
Just in wrapping it up, such an interesting conversation, and I appreciate both of your own lived experience, but also expertise in this discussion. Final thoughts from you both on what you want people to go away with?
I would say create a culturally safe workplace, recognise and respect cultural differences, and encourage peer support and an open reporting environment, because every worker deserves to go home safe.
I would actually like to borrow a vision from the NAWIC CEO, which is to practice FIR, so fairness, inclusion, and respect. And I think in this case, it's respect for your fellow worker. That also extends to respecting that, we all come from different backgrounds, and just to be flexible and open to learning and embracing difference in cultures. And I think from we get innovation through diversity.
Yeah, and the depth that diversity brings to any organisation.
Yes.
And organisation, but also personally.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you both.
Wow.
Where
you.
Where can people find more information?
On the WorkSafe ACT website, on the Safe Work Australia website, and also Safe Work New South Wales have a lot of documents that are translated. Just be careful when looking at other jurisdictions, because there may be some minor differences between our legislation and legislation in other jurisdictions.
And for NAWIC, the Women in Construction?
It's nawic.com.au. You can join mailing list and subscribe to the jurisdiction in this case. So we're in the ACT, so you can choose to receive updates from the ACT or from national if you wanted to find out more about what we're doing in the advocacy space.
Any other resources as a CALD woman working in Australia for 15 years? What else has been helpful to you?
So specifically in Canberra, I am an avid follower of Sitara's story. So that's SITARA''S story. So brings together immigrant women who are now living and working on Ngunnawal country. Just the support network. They run talk shops, I believe.
Reducing that isolation and bringing people together. And it just adds to that awareness of the support around and what is available and what is required.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel not alone.
Yeah, so absolutely big and supportive pool of resources. Suggest, checking them out, giving them a like. If you are a woman in construction, another organization or group to follow and reach out to would be Build Like a Girl, founded by Jo Farrell, who was ACT Australian of the Year 2024. So providing resources for females in construction, seeking community to get support from.
Well, thank you both for joining us today on the Safety Spotlight podcast. The fabulous Siti Mustaffa from Women in Construction, but also a practicing and qualified mechanical engineer, and the Commissioner of the WorkSafe ACT, Jacqui Agius.
Great to be with you both. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So that wraps up this episode of Safety Spotlight. Recommend it, pass it around, spread the word, and you can find us on all channels where you find your good podcasts. Thanks for listening.